Chapter 4. The fourth game piece sat on top of the board where Ahmad had just been. Far from blank, it now bore an impishly adorable and equally infuriating avatar of Ahmad. "Ahmad?" Farah called out in an uncertain, high voice. Farah looked down at the wooden slate still in her hands, hoping for some information, some clue as to where her brother was. Nothing. No reset, no help hotline, no instructions on what to do if a kid brother suddenly vanished. The message was the same as before. The game has begun. Farah stood motionless. She could faintly hear the sounds of clanging cooking pots, the murmur of politely restrained adults, the laughter of the other kids. "Your aunt gave you this present," Alex said. His voice was a distant rush in Farah's ears, as though she'd been thrown into the deep end of the pool. Part of her knew that she had to snap out of it. She couldn't bring Ahmad back this way. "We need to find her now," Essie said. The girls scrambled to their feet. Before they could get very far, Alex grabbed hold of Farah's sleeve. "Won't your mom notice that Ahmad isn't with us?" A lump rose in Farah's throat. Thankfully, Essie rescued her from answering. "Not necessarily. He could be playing in here or in the bathroom. We'll have him back before she even notices," Essie said. Before Farah could even grab the doorknob, the door burst inward. Standing in the doorway, her scarf sliding back from her sleek black hair, eyes wide and fingers trembling, was Aunt Zora, the one person who might be able to help. She grasped Farah's shoulders and stared into her eyes. "Are you all right? I thought I heard a boom." "Zora Masi, something happened to Ahmad," she blurted out. "I don't know what to do." Aunt Zora was already staring over her head. The game board sat in its moat of sand. The sight of it made Aunt Zora shudder. "Oh, no. Oh, God, please, no." Aunt Zora went straight for the board, but before she could step onto it, there was a sudden, quick shudder. The entire creation was suddenly surrounded by a beaming aura. Aunt Zora stepped back from it, sucking in a quick breath as her thin fingers slid into her mouth as though she'd been burned. "Zora Masi," Farah tried again. "The game, the Gauntlet of Blood and Sand. We wanted to play. 1 second he was here. Now Ahmad's gone." The color drained from Aunt Zora's cheeks, and her face went pale and greenish. Farah pressed forward, trying to explain as quickly as possible. "Ahmad came out of nowhere. He must have been hiding in the room. He wanted to play too, and he grabbed a game piece, and he vanished." He vanished. The words made it sound so real, so final. But Aunt Zora looked lost. "No, the game, no, no, no." She started pacing. "That was not meant for you. It shouldn't have been out in the open. That was meant for you. It shouldn't have been out in the open. There were some books I'd wrapped. It wasn't meant for me. I won't ask you how you found it. It can have a mind of its own," Aunt Zora broke in sharply. "And it's your 12th birthday." She paused, tearing up. I would never, the game ruined me. I was ejected from it for refusing to complete the challenges. I couldn't find my friend inside it, so I've held the game, even though I've hated it. I thought about tossing it out to sea. I was scared, though, that someone else might find it, a child could suffer. And now, that's exactly what happened." Farah, Essie, and Alex watched, transfixed. "It lures children." She held out her fingertips, and to Farah's horror she could see that they were swollen and seething with color, as though they'd been seared by a too-hot pot handle. "But Ahmad," Alex said, "the game took him." "How long has it been?" asked Aunt Zora. "Only a few minutes," Essie said. "Good. That means he can't have gone far. We don't have much time. Listen to me." Still shaking, tears running down her cheeks, though her voice was clear, she said, "You'll have to play the game and win the challenges. You're smart, much more than I was at your age. The architect will enjoy playing with you. Worthy opponents, especially after all this time, will appeal to him. Use that against him. You're a strong team. Work together. Look for Ahmad in between the challenges and get out as fast as you can, before the game can rebuild. Win and destroy the game. Lose and be stuck in it forever. Go now, for his sake. You have to." Chapter 5. The game's structure glimmered in the afternoon sunlight. deceptively gorgeous and tempting, inviting a finger to stroke its sleek sides and a pair of eyes to peer through the glass windows at the miniature kingdom that now populated the massive lantern that extended from the board at its base. It was filled with palaces and a desert landscape, a place where you could imagine doll-like royalty lived within, where sultans reclined in silk and gold-framed thrones, and their beautiful, long-locked daughters let down jet curtains of hair and combed flower petals out with their long, delicate fingers. Aunt Zora's crushed velvet and sandpaper voice looped through her brain. The game ruined me. I was ejected from it for refusing to complete the challenges. I couldn't find my friend inside it. That wouldn't be her brother. Farah's hands balled into fists, and she pushed herself upward, startling her friends. I'm going to play this game and get Ahmad out. I have to. Farah didn't expect her friends to join her. Why would they? These two friends she'd barely seen, who only a few minutes ago she could barely talk to, why would they put themselves in danger for her? Ahmad was her responsibility. I'm in, Essie added firmly. Alex looked down at the wooden slate of rules, resting it over his knees. How could we not play it now? Her heart swelled. All right. Farah grabbed her avatar. Essie's game piece sat on the side of the board. She picked it up and cleared her throat. Hello, we're ready now. I don't think we can say just anything to start, Alex said. We have to use the exact words from the instructions. Making sure they each had their game piece in hand, they stepped onto the board, and Farah called out, We are ready for the gauntlet. The world began to spin. Farah's stomach squished and contracted within her. Every part of her felt as though it were on a roller coaster, sudden jerks to the left and right. She didn't dare open her eyes, afraid they'd fly right out of her head. All she could do was breathe in, breathe out, shriek at every new dip and dive. It was hardly a comfort to hear her friends screaming right along with her. Soon she felt something grating along her skin, fine, thin granules that scratched at her. It was sand, Farah realized. She could feel it between her teeth and settling into her eyelashes. She thought of Ahmad and how he must have felt covered in sand blowing every which way, pressing against him so strongly he couldn't open his eyes, the sound deafening. Her heart dropped and her resolve hardened. And abruptly, the world calmed, with a final shudder that sent Farah sprawling to her side. A second later came Essie, then Alex. The three of them groaned. Is it finally over? Alex croaked out. What happened? Asked Essie. Farah rubbed her eyes and blinked, making sure she was seeing what she thought she was seeing. Guys? What? Essie and Alex said together. Open your eyes. Essie drew up her head, and after fumbling with his glasses, Alex did the same, rolling out from underneath her, and narrowly stumbled back before he toppled off the edge of a long dock. Whoa! He said. Be careful, Farah said. Spread out between the wooden slats and poles of the pier was a wide, clear, utterly motionless sea. It reflected their faces back to them. Farah's bewildered, Essie's alarmed, Alex panicked. The strange water didn't move. There were no ships and no sun, though Farah could hear an audible, rising noise. There were voices, some indistinct chattering or arguing, a sing-song refrain cajoling shoppers, and other noise, like clattering wheels and slamming doors. The voices were not the type you'd hear anywhere in New York City. That steady call, accompanied by the low, reassuring beat of a hand drum, was something she remembered from being tangled up in sheets and mosquito nets at her grandmother's house in Bangladesh. A sweet seller, or perhaps a public announcer calling the faithful to rise and eat the pre-dawn meal before a full day of fasting in Ramadan. Where had they gone within a matter of minutes? Most important, where was Ahmad? Farah, look! Essie grasped her by her shoulders and spun her around. The dock they stood on led somewhere else, not to the open, eerily silent sea. They were under the lip of a broad, colorful canopy made of many patches of fabric in rich brocades and creamy pastel silks, all strewn through with wildly bobbing paper lanterns. Beyond that, Farah could see a wash of activity, bodies bearing trays, hurriedly pushing forward carts and dispersing from around them various stalls. A souk, Farah said. It's beautiful, Essie whispered. We're definitely not in Kansas anymore, Alex pointed out, but I think this is the closest to a yellow brick road we've ever been offered. This is too weird, Essie shook her head rapidly. All of this is way too weird. Well, it's weird now. It's our weird now, and Ahmad is somewhere in the middle of it. For some reason, the sight of the souk wasn't making Farah nervous. If anything, it was making her feel giddy. The sight of people who looked like her, draped in long, elegant robes and with the occasional scarf wrapped around a passing head, grounded her. The feeling spread through her, a gulp of seltzer, bright and bubbly, even as the people slammed their shutters and closed their doors and were entirely focused on getting inside as quickly as possible. The trio managed to squeeze into the throng, and Farah ducked under the outstretched arm of a peddler with a cart full of gilded, golden cages. In every cage was a single red bird, which, when nodded to, trilled out a list of seemingly nonsensical ingredients. Ahmad had to be here somewhere. He would love this place. Salt, pepper, roc's egg, and a beloved tear. 2 potatoes, fresh pressed oil, and a merchant's treasured dagger when you need it most. A passing customer would pause, frown, and shake their head, or nod and smile eagerly and take the offered bird before rushing onward to the nearest sanctuary. Farah was dying to know exactly what sort of recipe would come out with a beloved's tear and a rock's egg. What in the world was a rock? But her friends dragged her onward, clinging fast to keep from being torn apart by the wind. Another stall sold the same trinkets Farah's uncles would occasionally bring from overseas, particularly if they were returning from Hajj. Music boxes with small toy crickets chirping cheerful songs, lovely lacquered fans, and even bowls of iridescent koi fish that bobbed up to the surface. The crickets looked a bit too real to Farah, and the fish stared up with her with wistful, almost human eyes as the merchant covered them over with straw mats. Carpets, pressed up against a derelict wall, fluttered. A row of lamps on another table, jealously guarded by their narrow-eyed shopkeeper, and the benefit of an overhanging archway, looked as though they'd been plucked right out of Aladdin, along with the carved fruits, pears and plums and apples that glistened temptingly in the light and decorated the ends of the table. The wind pushed the 3 friends deeper into the market. Through Farah's squinted eyes, she was almost sure the sand wasn't scattered, loose granules battered by a fierce undercurrent. It seemed more dense and more packed together, as if there were bodies, hands reaching out to grasp her or roughly shoving against her neck. The trio was ignored among the crowd, and yet Farah's skin prickled as if she were being watched. Let's see if we can find someone to help us, Alex muttered in her ear. Alex had already reached out for a woman's sleeve. She gave a firm tug. Excuse me, she began sweetly, and then reeled back, astonished because the woman shooed her away, muttering, "Pesky children as bad as the sandstorms these days," and forged onward, a basket of goods slung under her arms. Well, that was rude, Essie said. Let's try someone else, Farah said. The storm is getting worse. But no one seemed willing to help them. The people in the market raced ahead or yelled for them to find their own place to hide from the swelling storm. It was getting harder to see, and Farah could feel the sand doing its best to settle in her throat and peel back her scarf. Essie's curls were wild and whipping about her face. No one wants to help. What are we going to do? Alex called. Suddenly, as though those words had conjured her up, a woman stood before them. From what Farah could see of her, she was beautiful and mysterious, wrapped up in a glistening exoskeleton of gauzy shawls and a blouse, a vest, and what appeared to be a heavily lined skirt. Farah peered at her face, masked by shadows, and couldn't quite make it out. Essie squinted at her. Can she help us? Yes, I can, said the woman, and all 3 friends jumped back, utterly startled. The woman's voice was pleasant, though surprisingly ordinary. While they'd been darting through the enchanted marketplace, Aunt Zora's bizarre, caged fears had seemed unreasonable, downright silly. Faced by this shrouded, barely visible woman, Farah felt a tendril of weariness shift down her spine. "I think I have exactly what you need," the woman said, and the kids glanced among themselves with surprise. Did this woman know they were looking for Ahmad? She turned and ducked through one of the dark doorways. "Come, children, follow me. The storm is picking up, and I dislike picking sand from between my teeth." After a sidewise look at one another, the kids grasped one another firmly and followed in her wake.